Welcome to the Wild and Fierce podcast. We are your hosts, Amber
and Johanna. We're here to explore womanhood through real, raw, and unfiltered conversations.
Please remember this podcast is for education only and not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare professional.
Let's dive in.
All right, everyone. So this is actually part 2 of this episode. If you missed part 1, please go back and watch this. These episodes are so packed full of incredible information that we decided to break it into 2 parts so that we can give you guys even more information. So let's go ahead and dive into part 2 of this episode with Michael Rutherford.
Okay, so we talked about consequences a little bit. So like a consequence in the body might be thyroid dysfunction, and we have to ask why. And so this, I think, is a really nice like segue into why we should not just jump to hormone panels. So it's blood. I think I want to go blood hormone panels. So like testing testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, even like thyroid in some situations. Hormone panels, why we should not just jump straight to food sensitivity testing, and then Dutch tests as well. Do you want to kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so all of those things, like you said, are consequences. Here's how I was explain this is I don't necessarily it's not that I don't want to hear, right? But it's not that I don't want to hear what diagnosis you have, but I care less about that and more about why you have that diagnosis, because any given diagnosis can have multiple causes and reasons. And so I can't address the diagnosis and help support the symptoms and dysfunctions that you have unless I know why, because otherwise there's a wall of reasons and potential causes, and I'm blindfolded throwing darts and hoping I hit the right one. That kind of like, hey, you look online, I have these symptoms, and you look online and try and do a random protocol, right? And trying to work through yourself.
And this is like going back to like the hypothyroidism example. So the hypothyroidism is a consequence.
Yep.
And there's many, many, many different causes of it.
There's probably 8, was there probably like 6 or 8 main categories on there. And then each category had different things under that. As there's probably at least 30 some different bullet points on that web of like any one of those or a combination of them could be causing it. And that's not to overwhelm people, and like how that's why like we don't encourage you to do this on your own. Like you are going to so many clients have wasted hundreds, thousands of dollars. So when you look at working with a practitioner, like, I don't know if I can afford that. You've probably already spent thousands of dollars trying to do this on your own and years of wasting time. And so it's like you're actually going to save money working with an ethical, skilled practitioner who's not charging you $5,000 for 2 appointments and a lab. That's a different conversation in this space. But it's like it will actually typically save you money, and that can be hard. Savings is always hard to quantify and understand, and so I get that. But yeah, we have to really understand why that's happening. And you bring up the examples like, do we really need those hormones? You could have hormone issues, and we can typically know that because of your symptoms.
Yeah.
You could have thyroid issues. I really, as a practitioner who doesn't prescribe medication and hormones, I really don't ever need thyroid markers for the most part, because I can run all of the other labs, see what the actual underlying cause is. And when we address that underlying root cause, your thyroid markers changed. Whether we measure them or not, they still changed, and you feel better.
Yeah.
And so it's much more, you get into all of the different specialty testings, and they're all fun and they're pretty and they're cool to look at and they're attractive to both practitioners and clients.
Like they have answers.
Yep. But if a practitioner doesn't know how to utilize them and measure them back to blood, which is the standard that everything else is measured against, because we have vastly more research and understanding of blood markers than we do anything else. The vast majority of those things, they're confirmed and understood and built off of blood chemistry. And so we need to have that root understanding of the blood to see what's going on in the body and compare that, so we know why those dysfunctions are happening.
Yeah. So I think, to be very, very clear, hormones and hormone levels are a consequence of what's going on in the body. If they're optimal, great. That typically, and what does optimal mean too? But optimal and you have no symptoms, then great. If they're optimal in the lab range, but you're symptomatic, we need to dig in deeper. Why? If they're out of range and you're symptomatic, I don't really care what the levels are. We can often see that with symptoms. We need to ask why. Same
Why?
thing
It's
with food
still why.
sensitivities. Yeah, food
I think a
sensitivities.
great example is progesterone,
Yeah,
because progesterone, when you're stressed out, your progesterone turns into cortisol. So when you give progesterone, you just make more cortisol, which is your stress hormone.
yeah,
It's, again, just giving the thing doesn't fix the problem, because your body's under biochemical pathways, and so you're just feeding that pathway more,
yeah.
instead of like actually addressing the issue of what turned that pathway on.
Yeah. Yeah, low progesterone is never a low progesterone issue. We have to
Yeah.
ask why it's low. Same thing with food sensitivities. Like, oh my gosh, dairy gets blamed for everything, sugar gets blamed for everything, gluten gets blamed for everything. And it's like we have to ask, why is this individual sensitive to
Yep.
dairy? Why are they sensitive to soy? Whatever it might be. So doing a
Why
food
do random
sensitivity
fruits and
assessment.
vegetables
Yeah.
cause you symptoms? Foods that humans have been able to exist eating for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that oxalates are the end all be all, like destruction of your life, because we've consumed oxalates for thousands of years. So why now are some people not able to tolerate them? It's oxalate toxicity is not your root cause.
Yeah.
Histamine intolerance is not your root cause. Those things aren't the root cause of your problems. They are a step in that system, but there's something that has triggered that to happen. There's so and so people get stuck on low histamine diets because they're like, oh yeah, I have histamine intolerance. And then they're stuck on this crazy restrictive, hard to stick to diet, because you can't even have leftovers.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredibly frustrating. If you have a family, like, I don't know, we exist on leftovers a lot of, like, that's our
Yeah.
lunch a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, you should be able to tolerate. Shoot, we used to eat a very, and like humans used to eat a very high histamine diet because we didn't have refrigeration.
Yeah.
So we aged a lot of things, and that builds up loads of histamines.
Yeah.
So we used to have a very high histamine diet and never had problems. So
Yeah.
why is it that we do not do now with some? And that's because something else has driven that. So if you're like, oh, I have histamine intolerance, so I just need to eat a low histamine diet. That's not your root cause. There's something driving that. We need to figure that out so that you don't have to eat that way forever.
Yeah.
I think one of
And
the
I
most
think
go ahead.
the thing that I encourage is, if you have XYZ, histamine intolerance, dairy intolerance, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, low progesterone, ask why until you can no longer ask why. And I think that's what a lot of practitioners don't do.
If you've been given a diagnosis, it's not a root cause. I can tell you that.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
I actually, like, there's times where I'm like, I don't really care what your diagnosis
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like, again, whether that's an allopathic, like full on disease, or it's like a functional medicine, like histamine intolerance diagnosis, like
Yeah.
SIBO, none of those things are root causes. And so if your practitioner's like, oh, I'm a SIBO specialist or I'm a histamine intolerance specialist, they probably aren't. They are a specialist in managing that symptom and living with it, versus actually reversing it and getting to the root cause of that.
Yeah, for sure. Amber, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say an example when you're talking about like thyroid that was like mind blowing to me when Johanna and I first started talking about all of my stuff. And she's like, Amber, it's not a thyroid problem. And I was like, what do you mean with my Hashimoto's? I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean it's not a thyroid problem, Johanna? Like, I'm on a thyroid.
Clearly it is.
Yeah, I'm like, it's been my thyroid. And she's like, no, something
Like,
is.
I'm on thyroid meds.
Yeah, but she's like, your thyroid is being attacked. You have to figure out why your body is doing that. And I was like, light bulb. And
Mhm.
nobody had ever said that before. It was like, here's your diagnosis. Nobody ever went to like, well, why did we get to this state? What caused your body to start attacking your thyroid? Like that was just so eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I mean, even that, like, especially like Hashimoto's, like, that's no longer a thyroid, specifically Hashimoto's, that's an immune issue.
Yes, which nobody, I mean, granted, I
Yeah.
knew it was autoimmune. That's all they ever said. It's autoimmune, it's your thyroid. And I was like, okay, well, my thyroid sucks. Like, that sucks. Now I think about it like people when they're like, I have a bad back. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do you have a bad back or do you suck at sleeping, suck at managing stress, all of these other things? So it's like, it's the same thing, I feel like, with a lot of health conditions.
Yeah.
Well, I have X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, what got us to this point? Not just here's your diagnosis. Because then it becomes, you go into the trap of like, now it's your identity. I'm
Yep.
autoimmune. I have this. I have this. You know?
Yeah, that's talk about a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
You are not your diagnosis
Yes.
and disease. You are someone that happens to have it. Just like I have my phone and I can also set my phone down and walk away from it.
Yeah.
It is not tethered to me. It is not who I am.
Yeah.
And that's even if you were diagnosed at 14. Like,
Yeah. Doesn't matter how long ago it was.
Yeah, I have a friend that has PCOS and she's like, "Well, I've had it my whole life. Like, what do you mean I can reverse it?" And I'm like, this is the pitfall of
Yeah.
conventional medicine and how
Unless
they
it
talk
is
about
like a
things.
true genetic problem, like Down syndrome. Like we can't
Yeah,
reverse
yeah,
Down
yeah, yeah.
syndrome. That is a full
Great
genetic
example.
breakdown.
Great example.
Anything other than that, it is not just what you're stuck with. I totally thought I was in that. I was like, I've had IBS since I was 7. Like this is just I've tried all the things. If you feel like you've tried all the things and you still have your problems, you haven't.
Totally.
Because we can address that. And so you aren't just stuck there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay,
Alrighty.
so I want to talk about markers, but I also want to like rein us in and make sure that we don't spend like an hour per
I
marker.
told you we could be here.
I know we could be here, yeah, for a long time. So let's spend like max like 5 minutes. I know we're gonna want to dive deeper, but just give people a taste of some of these like big markers. Are we good? Did I
Let's do
lose?
glucose and insulin. I think that's a good one because that's where
Okay, perfect.
so many people are struggling
Okay,
and
perfect.
don't realize it. I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna talk about glucose and insulin, how we look at it versus how conventional looks at it, and then how we get preventative versus reactive with it. So
Yeah. So yeah, let's start with the whole idea that conventional doesn't look at insulin,
sure.
which is the biggest problem. So insulin, the only thing we think of insulin is like type 1 diabetes and maybe type 2 diabetes. And it's like, what does that have to do with me, right? I love type 1 diabetes. I don't need that. Insulin is what controls your glucose levels, along with there's other hormones, but insulin is the key regulator of not allowing it to get too high. And it's really the only way we have to bring it down. We have lots of ways to bring glucose up because the vast majority of human existence, we spent way more time in famine and starvation and under consuming. So we needed lots of ways to make more. And we just needed one safety mechanism to bring it down. Now we live in the complete opposite. We have an overabundance, especially in the Western world, of energy and surplus and carbohydrates. It's like, holy cow, we need 4 different ways to bring it back down. And so doctors are just checking glucose. Most doctors, until that gets high, won't even check your HbA1c, which is probably fine. But it is HbA1c is the gold standard for diagnosing type 2 diabetes. So we're just checking glucose. Well, we've known since the 80s that your insulin levels will rise years before your glucose ever gets out of range. We could potentially see the progression of insulin resistance, which is the driving factor of type 2 diabetes. And I'll explain what that is in a second. Anywhere from 3 to 10 years prior to a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, if we actually looked at insulin. So, insulin resistance, the easiest way to understand this is resistance is essentially, think of it, we've probably all done this. If you have chronic back pain, going back to that, is that we take ibuprofen, right? Or Advil or Tylenol or something, right? And so we start with one pill. Well, after 3, 4 weeks, that's not working anymore. We need 2. Another month later, we need 3. And it keeps building up because we build our tolerance to that. And we need more of that compound to get the same effect. Your body's the same way with insulin. It just takes, it doesn't happen in weeks. It takes years, but we need more and more in order to have the same glucose controlling effect. And so your body will spend years producing more and more insulin to keep your glucose under control until it gets to a point where we become so insulin resistant it can't, and your glucose levels finally begin to rise. So when we have that issue of like there's years of progression of insulin resistance before your glucose levels get too high. The second issue is the lab range on insulin is astronomical. And this is the one that varies differently. Some labs 16 to 18, same unit of measure. LabCorp 24.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference. That's a 50% raise from about 18 to 24. Or, let's say 17 or so.
Give an example of the functional range, just to
Yeah, so the functional range is about 2 to 6, 2 to 7, somewhere in that. Like I am, depending on the case, single digit minimum, ideally about 2 to 6 or so. At the very least, it should be single digit. Well, that's even half of the most stringent of allopathic ranges. And so again, but some of those go up to 24, which is 3 times the amount, because again, That's typically like 24 or higher is where we kind of expect to see it in type 2 diabetes. And that's all we're trying to avoid is type 2 diabetes.
And
But
this
it's
is
like,
fasted. I want to make that
and
clear.
that is fasted.
It's
Yes.
fasted. So
But
it's
that's the other concern is that these need to be done fasted. And doctors will send you to get these labs done in the middle of the day.
yeah.
Like you just had lunch before you got to the doctors, and let's just take lipids for example. They're like, oh yeah, that doesn't need to be fasted. It used to be, and now they're going to where it doesn't need to be because they can put you on more medications if you're not.
And this happened to your husband, Amber. It happened to Sai. He
Yeah.
went to do a panel
Labs in
at
the
2
middle of the
p.m.
day. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, why did your doctor do that?
Yeah, because most meals are going to have some amount of fat in them,
Yeah.
which is essentially what your lipid panel is. Is lipid means fat. Like that's literally what lipid means. Is it's fats. And if you consume fats in a meal, your levels are going to rise, assuming you absorb them. So that's actually a good thing that they raised after a meal because that means you absorb them. We have to transport them, so they go into your blood and raise those blood levels temporarily, right? But within 6 to 12 hours, those are going to come back down. It's not a permanent rise, but if we test it in that fed state, that's going to be vastly different. And a lot of markers, many serum nutrient markers like iron, serum magnesium, all of your electrolytes on that metabolic panel, all of those are impacted by whatever levels were in the food that you ate. Your thyroid markers impacted by your eating, your lipid panel, your glucose levels. So many markers are impacted by just eating normal. Like you don't have to eat something crazy, just normal. Period. Unless we are specifically looking for a reaction, like an oral glucose tolerance test that would be used in pregnancy, that's a different conversation. But unless we're specifically looking for a reaction, baseline all labs should be done between 7 and 10 in the morning fasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something that, like, listening to this, please know that. Always request it. Even if your doctor doesn't say that it needs to be fasted, just do it fasted.
Yep.
That's how you standardize it, too, because otherwise you
Yep.
have to have the same meal before every panel in order to keep it consistent, too.
Yeah, because like we can't compare fasted labs to non-fasted labs and then have that comparison and no one's talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the other thing too, can you talk about how insulin also rises due to parasites, mold, cell danger response, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean anything, and it's anything that stresses your body. So we talked about how insulin lowers it. We have four-ish primary hormones that can help raise it. Glucagon is the opposer to insulin and should be your standard hormone that helps bring glucose up. But if that fails, then you have your adrenal hormones, which are epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are like adrenaline, and cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not just that when those are stimulated because of low glucose levels, that those then impact your glucose levels, is anything that stresses your body and causes the adrenal glands to release those hormones. One of the actions of those hormones is to go to your liver and tell it to release the glucose that it has stored and make more, raising your glucose levels. And when your glucose levels rise above 90, your body releases insulin to get that back under control. So stress directly impacts this whole system of glucose regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And that anything that stresses your body can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just once again shows you just because you have high glucose or high insulin does not mean you stop there. You have to ask why.
Yeah.
Is it parasites? Is it mold? Is it poor eating habits? Is it nutrient deficiencies? Whatever it might be. And that's where getting deeper and deeper into the root cause is so powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, A1C, it's super misunderstood. Let's talk about that and then what's optimal versus risky.
Yeah. Okay. So they're cut up. Mostly we're just concerned about high levels of A1C. So your A1C is measuring, and it's based off of certain things. So it's not perfect. There are things outside of your glucose that can impact this. We'll talk about that in a second. But in theory, it is measuring what your average glucose was over about the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. So lab cutoff, it used to be 5.6, it's now 5.7. They inched it up a little bit. So 5 point. Go ahead.
Can I point out real quick? So glucose changes with food and your diet, and it changes. It is not consistent. I think that's something that people don't realize.
Yeah, so there's an up and it's not just you have this steady level. Now it's supposed to be, we should only have about 4 grams. That's a teaspoon. That's it, of glucose in our entire bloodstream at any one point in time. That's meant to be our baseline, and that's where our body wants to keep that. So keep that in mind. But when we eat, especially carbohydrates, that rises. Then we use insulin to bring that back down. Now we have many of us, especially women, have probably experienced reactive hypoglycemia. You eat especially a high carb meal, it shoots up. Your body overcompensates because you're beginning to actually get insulin resistant. That's what reactive hypoglycemia is early insulin resistance. And it shoots it back down. It overcompensates. Now we get low blood sugar. You kick up your adrenal glands, kick up those hormones we talked about because glucagon didn't act fast enough, and that's where all your symptoms come from: the shakiness, the agitation, the anxiety, the hunger cues, hangry, right? All of that is the response of what those hormones are doing to your body. That's they're because they're it's like, hey, you need to eat food, like they're warning you.
Yeah.
So that happens, but it's an average. Okay. So average is the median between the sum of your highs and lows. Well, 140 to 60 is an average of 100. So is 200. That's high. It gets really hard after that. But if we have some 200s, but a lot of times down at 70, right, that could still average out to a total of 100. If we have lots of 70s and some 200s, we could still average out. So there's problems there because big swings are signs of insulin resistance, but it won't show in your A1C. The A1C is actually the last marker to finally move in insulin resistance. Insulin is first, your fasting glucose is second, and then finally, when it gets really bad, your HbA1c begins to move. I see great optimal A1Cs for years through insulin resistance. Sometimes it goes down before it goes up. So we have that. The lab range is 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes. But as long as if you're at 5.6, you're totally fine. But as soon as you're 5.7, you're like, oh, you have pre-diabetes. Right? 5.6, you were totally healthy. 5.7, you have pre-diabetes. 6.4, you're only pre-diabetes. 6.5, you have type 2 diabetes. Okay.
I hope you guys can pick up the sarcasm.
It's like, oh, so we do recognize that there actually is a progression there, so that there's something. It's like we're seeing that, right? It's like some people. I think it was my stepdad the other day was showing. It's like I either have diabetes or I don't, because he's been pre-diabetic for years. He's like, well, which is it? Do I have diabetes or I don't? It's like, well, we've actually recognized that there is a progression. We just don't recognize it soon enough and in the right markers. But optimal would really be less than like 5.3 or lower. So because we recognize that there's progression. We want to be nowhere near that. We know that 5.4, 5.5, 5.6 are all associated with negative outcomes. But then we get into the fact that what it's measuring is not actually, there's no way, unless you had like a CGM for 3 months, to literally know what your glucose has been over the last 3 months. So what it does is, when there's lots of glucose in your bloodstream, is it causes what's called glycation, which is just an effect that happens on proteins in your blood. The one that it's specifically measuring is hemoglobin, which is what transports iron in your red blood cells. It's a protein that lives for a long period of time, that lasts for about 120 days. So it's measuring how much that has been glycated, and we assume that much glycation is because of X amount of glucose in the blood. But what if something's impacting how long that hemoglobin is living for? What if something is causing it to live longer, which happens? The average is in a healthy adult with nothing going on with your red blood cells and hemoglobin is about 120 days. But if it lives for 150 days, it gets more glycated, because the longer it lives, the more glycation there is. What if on the flip, so you have a higher A1C because more glycation happened, even though you actually had the same average glucose levels over that time period? It was just living longer. Now let's go the opposite way. What if you have hemoglobin that's living less than 120 days, let's say 90 days? Well, that is less glycation. So you have a lower A1C than is actually represented of your blood sugar. So different anemias can cause different impacts on your red blood cells and hemoglobin, where some may cause them to live less and some may cause them to live longer. I've seen an A1C which this by blood sugar isn't possible, went from a 5.3 to a 4.3, which you just don't really see in 3 weeks. That was because you can't do that with your blood sugar. Like, that's just not actually possible to do that by your actual blood sugar. 3 weeks isn't enough to have that major of an impact. Even if you have really high levels, you can't impact your A1C that much in 3 weeks because it's like 100-ish day average. So 3 weeks just isn't enough to impact it that much. But she was extremely anemic. We gave her tons of nutrients for her body to make more red blood cells and hemoglobin, which anemia is absence of those things, a lack of those things. And her body literally almost doubled her hemoglobin in 3 weeks. Well, all of those brand new hemoglobin and red blood cells didn't have time to become glycated. So we drastically impacted how much had been. And I know, again, big love, but it's like we have to be able to take all those things into account and look at that instead of just, oh, your A1C is high, and so, this is it. Or your A1C is normal, but all your other signs point to high blood sugar, and there's actually something non-related to blood sugar causing your A1C to be low. And this is why this is like my course is called Mastering the Art of Blood Chemistry, because these are the things that we have to take into consideration when looking at any labs. It's never one marker. It's not even just your glucose markers. It's not your glucose, insulin, and A1C, but what are like 15 other markers and systems that are going on? What's your system? What's your eating history? What's your symptom history? And everything else that comes into this, that's really giving us the whole picture.
Hopefully this is really showing
the complexity
why
and the importance.
Feel like crap.
It's real.
Come back normal.
Yeah. That it's not just in your head.
No, it's definitely not. Absolutely not. Okay, cholesterol. Once again, like I feel like this could be a whole like episode itself, but cholesterol is very nuanced, and they also demonize cholesterol in conventional panels, which then causes issues. So I would say majority of my clients that come to me might have high cholesterol in a conventional panel, but from a functional perspective, which is optimal, remember, I'm like, you guys are just fine. So go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
There's a lot that goes into this because most of functional medicine even gets this wrong, because we look at research in 60-year-olds in high cholesterol and say, oh, actually people with, women with total cholesterol of 240 actually live the longest. And so we're like, everyone should have higher cholesterol. But that the 60-year-old plus woman, her range does not apply to the 30-year-old woman. A 30-year-old woman with 240 cholesterol is probably problematic because we know that cholesterol levels rise as we age. So if we're starting at 30 at 240, by the time we're 60, we're going to be over 300. And that does show as problematic. So we need serious age brackets, probably like, I would say under 30 would be one bracket, 30 to 50 would probably be another bracket, and then 50 and over is probably its own bracket as well.
And male, female.
And male, female, because there is slight differences. Females should have, especially over the age of 60, should have slightly higher levels than males. So, and there's no nuance there in conventional medicine, and even in functional medicine, that's not taught a whole lot much either. We're just applying the studies done on the geriatrics and the older population to everyone, and functionally we can see when we look at physiologically how cholesterol evolves, that's not really appropriate either. And so, and then even Western medicine says, period, it's bad. If it's high, it's bad. And so we just need medications to lower it. And we don't want to know why it's bad, even though it builds all of your cells and it's a healing compound in your body and all of the things. Like, it's really important. And so if it's high, we need to know why, because we do want to address that. Why? Because the high levels could be concerning, but just lowering it doesn't fix the problem. It's like putting duct tape over your check engine light and being like, my car's fixed. Like, no, it's not. You still have a problem. You just hid the reason why. In functional medicine, they're like, well, if your metabolic health is fine, then your cholesterol levels don't matter. And that's not true either. Johanna, I show tons of examples in my course where there are obvious problems when we look at advanced lipid markers in people who are metabolically healthy. I'm a great example. My advanced markers were double the range of where they should be. So optimal would be around 1,000. Mine were just over 2,000, even though my metabolic health was perfect. I had optimal A1C, optimal HDL, optimal triglycerides, great A1C, great glucose. All of the markers relating to my metabolic health were fantastic. And yet my lipids were super high. And I'm not going to get into all the causes as to why. Some of that is mold, some of that is dental stuff. There are multiple things. Essentially, there was inflammation. But I would get missed by most functional practitioners because my metabolic health was fine. And like, don't worry about your lipids. It's actually not an issue. And that's not true either.
Yeah. Well, and I think I do want to talk about why cholesterol elevates, just like what you had just pointed out.
There's a problem in the body.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a problem.
But similar to thyroid, it could be a lot. Like just about any problem in the body could potentially lead to elevated cholesterol levels. And that's, again, we have to understand why. And some of it isn't even necessarily inherently a problem. I've seen numbers double in short periods of time because someone got a tattoo.
Wild.
Yeah.
I've seen advanced markers literally double from around 900 to 1800 to about 2000 because someone got a tattoo the week before their lab's done.
Yeah.
We had a history of their labs and it had never been elevated. And I spent like 45 minutes on a call with them trying to figure out why this, like what changed, what is going on. And he realized he had gotten a tattoo the week before that. He's like, what would that have to do? I was like, oh yeah, well, we know they're full of heavy metals and toxins and stressed your body out. And so we didn't get crazy, but we did gentle detox support to make sure we could help eliminate those from the bodies. And 6 months later, his labs were back to normal.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that like that's why, because you were like, well, I didn't get a tattoo. It's just that there could be anything. Mine was dental inflammation. Got that resolved. My points dropped 500 points from 2000 to 1500 just by resolving dental inflammation. That doesn't mean everyone with dental inflammation has that or that that's the primary cause. I show examples to say it could be so many different things. Anything going on in your body that can cause inflammation causes cell breakdown, and that means we need to make new cells, and cholesterol is needed to make new cells. So anything that is causing dysfunction in your body could potentially cause elevated cholesterol.
And I think this is why it's so important to not just take a statin because
you shut down your body's ability to heal itself.
Yeah, and like yours was a dental issue, not a cholesterol issue, but the cholesterol was a consequence, right?
Yeah, it was the check engine light saying, hey, something's going on. There's inflammation in the body.
And the statin would be the duct tape, just like what you said. And I think that's the biggest frustration about how a lot of these markers are handled, is they're handled like, let's put duct tape on it, or let's take a pill to correct the marker, not asking why is the marker high or low in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, I think last one for the markers would be why we have to look at more than just TSH for thyroid.
Yeah, so your TSH isn't a thyroid marker.
That's the biggest thing. No one knows that.
It's like, so your TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. That is a signal coming from your brain to tell your thyroid to produce hormones. It is meant to be, it is using that as a way to measure your thyroid function is under the assumption that your brain is appropriately responding to the thyroid hormones in your blood. Most functional medicine practitioners and educators will tell you that the number one cause of thyroid dysfunction is Hashimoto's. I completely disagree. In the US, worldwide, we all agree it is iodine deficiency, but that's really just in second and third world countries. In first world countries, that's not really an issue. But they will tell you in first world countries, the number one thing is autoimmune disease. I completely disagree. I think the number one cause is hypopituitary function. Mm-hmm. So the pituitary is a part of your brain, and that's actually where the TSH is coming from. And what I see, especially in women, is low pituitary function. So there isn't enough TSH coming to tell your thyroid to produce hormone, because the thyroid, unless it has hyperthyroid issues going on, that's a different issue. But it's generally only going to make what it's told to make. Mm-hmm. So if there's not a lot of TSH, it's not going to make a lot of hormone, and that's not the thyroid's fault. Its job is to respond to the TSH. If there's not a lot of TSH, it's not going to produce a lot of hormone. And what we see is low TSH, low hormones. That shouldn't happen. They should operate. Johanna, how am I going to say it? How should they operate? Like a what?
Oh, it's been 2 years since I watched your lectures, Michael.
on a playground.
There we go, on a seesaw.
On a seesaw, right? So this happens with a lot of markers.
Yep.
They should operate like a seesaw, meaning as one goes up, the other is down. As your thyroid hormones go up, your TSH should drop, because if you have lots of thyroid hormones, you theoretically, that's a different situation, but theoretically don't need a lot more, so we have less TSH. As your thyroid hormones come down, your TSH should go up because we need more.
Mhm.
Well, a really sad seesaw is both sides low.
Yeah.
It's broken, right?
Both
It's
kids are on the
broken.
ground.
Both kids are on the ground because something broke, and that isn't right. And even more, like ideally, we're both, and this isn't fun on a seesaw, but it's just where this falls apart a little bit, was that both are kind of in the middle of their range, right? And so they're level. As long as that board is straight, we're okay. And ideally, we'd want those kind of a flat line, right?
Yeah.
But where it can get hard for practitioners is everything is in optimal range, but everything is at the low end of the range, even optimal, and they're symptomatic. That is still a hypopituitary issue, because if at the very bottom or just below it, if our TSH isn't at the high end, we've got an issue, because it should be, because we have lower levels of hormones and symptoms. So we should have more TSH to represent that. And that's where it gets missed a lot. And because again, practitioners are just like, well, everything's in optimal, and so that's actually not a problem. It's something else causing your symptoms. No, it actually is not enough thyroid hormone. You're just not seeing that pattern because you only know your ranges. And if it's not out of that range, you don't think it's a problem. And so this is where its patterns are really important. And it's not singular markers or markers by themselves. It's what's the interpretation of this marker related to this other marker or these other markers that are really important. And it's all about the patterns to see what's the underlying dysfunction.
Totally. Well, in hypopituitary issues, what we see, and Amber, I know you see this, you may not know that you're seeing it because you're not looking at blood
You
work.
see it in most of your clients who struggle with fatigue.
It's
This is going to be
undereating.
what's going on.
Oh,
And it's
100%.
Under eating and then over exercising.
Yeah.
So you get into PT and weight loss and all of that. How many women are eating 1,200 calories and in the gym 5-6 days a week,
Mhm.
doing an hour of cardio, all these different things, and like punishing themselves? They're not eating enough protein either.
Yeah.
And so we're under eating protein, we're under eating calories, we're over exercising. On top of, they are working a full time job and doing full time at home, running their kids and the house and everything else. And
Literally running
so they have to start their day on 3 cups of coffee. Then they're so jacked up from all of the adrenal hormones and the coffee that they use alcohol at night to calm themselves down, and they wreck their system. And that is most women between the ages of 25 to 45, I would say. Most fit into that picture.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And
Like
so,
I'd say, like most hypothyroidism cases, you can almost always guarantee that they're under eating, and we should start there before anything else. But unfortunately, they get meds, which then rev their thyroid even more and rev their metabolism even more, but they're eating the daily intake of a toddler.
yeah. And so that pattern gets missed in a lot. One, if you're only checking TSH, what happens is your TSH will look normal, but you have low hormones, even within the optimal range. So even if we were using a better range, if we're just testing TSH, it's still a problem, because that might fit in the optimal range. And so you're like, oh, things are good, but your thyroid hormones are low, which means that's actually not enough TSH. It should be higher to bring those hormones up. But even if we run them all, if we don't know how to properly assess that and understand this whole seesaw action, we're at a disadvantage as well.
Totally.
Wild. You're pregnant and everyone keeps asking, are you ready? But honestly, you don't even know what ready means. Your doctor keeps mentioning your pelvic floor, but doesn't explain what it actually does. Your birth class covers breathing techniques, but you're still confused when to push and when to wait. Your friends share horror stories that leave you more terrified than prepared. Meanwhile, here you are Googling how to write a birth plan at 2 a.m., wondering if you should ask for an epidural or try to go at it natural, and completely overwhelmed by conflicting advice about postpartum recovery. You want to feel confident walking into the delivery room, or maybe a home birth or a birth center. You want to understand what your body needs to be strong for labor. You want a birth plan that's actually useful, not just wishful thinking. And you definitely don't want to be blindsided by what comes after baby arrives. That's exactly why I created my birth prep and postpartum recovery course. This isn't just another generic birth class that treats all women the same. This is a step-by-step guide specifically designed for your female body and your unique birth experience. I'll walk you through exactly how to prepare your pelvic floor and core for birth, not with generic Kegels, but with targeted exercises that actually work. You'll learn how to create a birth plan that's flexible, but also powerful, and how to advocate for yourself when it matters most. Most importantly, you'll discover what postpartum recovery really looks like and how to set yourself up for the strongest comeback possible. Instead of feeling anxious and unprepared, you'll feel confident and empowered. Instead of hoping for the best, you'll know exactly what to expect and how to handle whatever comes your way. For just $79, you get lifetime access to everything you need to prepare for birth and beyond. That's less than what most people spend on baby gear that you'll use for only 6 months. Your birth experience matters, your recovery matters, and most importantly, you matter. Check the show notes for the link to purchase and transform your pregnancy from overwhelming to empowering today. Okay, we're gonna do one more question, then we're gonna wrap it up, guys. Ready?
Alrighty.
We talked about this in the beginning, so I'm actually really excited for you to explain this. Should someone who is having gut stuff take a food sensitivity test? Are food
No.
sensitivity tests legit? Okay, explain why.
So I've worked with over 1,000 clients. I've never ordered a single one. And I've helped a lot of people. And I used to specialize in gut health. Never ran it. There are some educators, I won't name names. There are some educators out there that tell you should never run stool testing without a food sensitivity test. And I think that is, it's immoral. Like it's a big problem. It shouldn't.
So expensive.
Yeah, especially the one that they recommend is like $300-400. Like that's not chump change to most people, and you just don't need it because it especially even more so you could contextually use it, though I think it's still an overpriced way to do it. You could contextually use that as a good practitioner to help. But here's the thing: neither of us have ever run one, and we've helped a lot, like 1,000+ people without it. And even hundreds of those people with digestive issues without ever running it. So is it really necessary? Probably not. Right. And so, but even more so, the issue where people themselves just go online, they order. I love that people have personal access to this stuff. It's great. And it comes with caveats and problems. This would be a big one where people go and order that test, interpret it themselves, and be like, okay, the things that are high I need to avoid. Well, shoot, that's everything I've been eating for months.
For dinner last night.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, that's all I eat is what's on this. All that showed is that you have gut issues. That's it. You already knew that because that's why you're taking the test. And that's all it showed is you have gut issues. And so the things that you're eating, your body's reacting to, and simply eliminating those things and eating different things doesn't fix the problem, because guess what? It will eliminate your symptoms for a short period of time. But then those things come back. You're like, oh, I need another test. So you take a new one. And you're like, oh, no, that's what I've been eating for the last couple months. And so now I need to go and change again. And it gets into this cycle because, again, we're addressing the symptom and the consequences, not the underlying issue, which is not your food sensitivities to cucumbers. It is that you have a broken digestive system that needs to be repaired. And so we get in there, we repair that, we get the inflammation down, we allow your microbiome to flourish, all of those things. We get you chewing your food appropriately, being calm when you're eating, not chugging a gallon of water, like all these really simple things, not eating on the go, not snacking all the time, not taking antacids, like all these different things that are really basic that will actually cause you to never need those food sensitivity tests again.
Yeah. I think that's actually a big ick of mine, is how complicated gut healing seems when you're trying to heal your gut and you're not a practitioner. And it seems like you need these greens juices or this cleanse or that cleanse or this detox or that detox or this elimination diet. And I'm like, no.
But it's like you need to chew your food and sit down.
You need to chew your food. So if you have gut issues, here you go. This is how you start to reverse them. Eat whole, nutrient-dense foods, probably cooked. Stop eating so much raw stuff.
Lots of cooked foods.
Do really well. Stop chugging water with your meals.
Or drinking alkaline water.
That one's huge. Or just liquids during meals. That's diluting your stomach acid. Take bitters or apple cider vinegar before your meals. Sit down for your meals. Stop eating in the car. Eat 3 to 5 meals a day. Allow your digestive system some time between meals to digest. Did I miss anything? Honestly, it can be that
Ta-da!
simple. Yeah, it really, really, and that's how I healed a lot of my gut issues. Then, if you still have some remaining stuff, there could be iron, there could be, maybe then you need to do a parasite
Yeah,
protocol.
do those
Maybe
things
stuff.
first for like
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks and then figure out where you're at.
Then see where you're at. And I think that's where it's like, yeah, testing hormones can be great. 6 months down the road after you've worked.
Oh no, she froze. This is a beautiful shot for her to breathe.
Complicated.
Oh, I was just about to get a screenshot
We
too.
lost you. We lost you.
Uh-oh, where did I cut off?
I honestly don't know.
Uh-oh.
You were like really intense and it was like
It was
okay.
It was like right like you were in the explanation of like do these things for like 6 to 8 weeks and then.
So do the foundations first, the things that we just rattled off first, then you could look at parasites or your hormones or blah blah blah. But I think this is where the ball gets missed in most practitioner situations is they go for the parasite protocol, they go for the elimination diets, they go for the hormone testing first without addressing any of the basics. And it's so backwards and it causes so much pain and frustration for so many people, myself included. That's how I got here.
Yep.
That's how I think we all kind of got here. And so it's really frustrating. And I think that's a big gripe that I have with all these protocols and stuff like that. It's like they have a time and a place, but they shouldn't be done first.
Yep.
Okay.
Look at all that we covered.
I think we covered as much as we probably should in one episode.
It seems we might have to do a part 2.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, I'm like, this is part of why I haven't done a podcast, because until you get to Joe Rogan level, no one wants to listen for a 3-hour podcast. But I don't know how to do short podcasts. So it'll be interesting. I literally have to take one topic at a time.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to share. And I think this is why Amber was really, like she's like, start talking about this more. And I feel like on Instagram or just like on a single post, I'm like, I don't know how to.
I am so bad at Instagram right now because I can't figure out how to singular it down and do justice.
Yeah.
And that's the struggle that I'm at. I'm in my own head, and I know that I can, but it's like I get so in my head about it, so I totally get it.
Yeah. Beauty of podcasts, but just have to make it short. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Amber, do you have any final questions or any clarification points or anything?
No, I think other than the biggest thing is like, don't go for the Band-Aid approach. Be an advocate for yourself. Ask the questions.
Yep.
There's always a deeper root cause.
Your lab's fasted.
Yeah, as someone that's been through all of this. So
I can sum it up. So there's 3 root causes. It's that simple. 3 categories. You're either deficient, you are toxic, and now these categories obviously broad. Like deficiencies, that could be macronutrients, any of your micronutrients, it could be water, like sleep. It can be really like there's a lot that could fit into deficiencies, but it's a deficiency of some sort, a toxicity of some sort. So that could be heavy metals, parasites, bacteria, yeast, candida, mold, FC. Like again, still broad, but it needs to come back to those. Or what we call vitality, which is like soul, spirit, your energy, like your mental health, those things. If it's not one of those 3 things, you haven't hit the root cause yet. And you might have multiple and they feed off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're at a point that isn't one of those things, you haven't reached it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Michael, anything that you want to end with or how people could find you or work with you? I know you had mentioned that by the time this episode comes out, your fall round for the blood chem course will be already started, but in the new year, you said is your next one.
Yeah, we should probably have one in January. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Highly recommend it. If you're a practitioner, it will blow your mind. It's like a big brain workout every week, but it's very awesome. I mean, we just kind of touched on some things just in this episode. So if your mind's kind of spinning, I definitely think that, you might love it. So check that out. Follow Michael on Instagram. And then do you also work with clients as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're, if there's anything that he said today that really resonated with you and you want, have him look at things deeper, I think he's a great resource. He's looked at my own blood work. I have him look at almost every blood panel now to help me figure things out. So he's awesome. And just thank you so much for coming and
thanks for having me.
all of this info.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for hanging out with us on the Wild and Fierce podcast. If you loved this conversation, we'd be so grateful if you left a review and shared it with a friend who needs to hear this.
And if you really loved it, take a screenshot, share it on your stories, and tag us. We'd love to see it. Until next time, stay wild, stay fierce, and keep owning your journey.